You know, I've said this before and I'll say it again. It is amazing to me that not even just with NXT is one thing, and we've been saying that for years, but with SmackDown specifically, how could you have a show like you did on Monday night with Raw, and then have a show like this with SmackDown literally 4 days later from the exact same company? Again, NXT is an entirely different beast. I understand that's, developmental, quote-unquote, whatever. Different people in charge, different creative team, different feel to it. A completely different branch from WWE. I understand that. SmackDown, from what I understand, I don't work there, I don't know anyone who works there in terms of behind-the-scenes writers and shit. From what I understand, it's the same writing team, clearly the same person in charge, that being Vince McMahon. For every bad thing that we complain about from Vince, oh, he's out of touch, blah, blah, blah. He's also in charge of everything that we're seeing that's good, too. I mean, that's also worth bringing up. Vince doesn't get enough credit for the good stuff that he does, along with the bad. And there's a lot of bad. I mean, look no further than Raw. Raw is terrible. Raw is a terrible show. SmackDown, though, is a great show. Some weeks more than others. But this is the type of show that I would love to see more of. I feel like SmackDown has done a great job over the last, I would say, maybe 8 months, really since Roman Reigns' return. That was really the catalyst that's made SmackDown a far more enjoyable show than it was a year ago. You go back a year with some of the shit they were doing with, no offense to them, but like the Braun and Fiend stuff wasn't overly great. We had, the karaoke competition. I've reviewed all the episodes, almost every episode of SmackDown on Fox over the last year and a half. You can go back and find some pretty terrible episodes of SmackDown on Fox, especially early on when Goldberg beat The Fiend. Not on SmackDown, but that was the SmackDown storyline in early 2020. This was a really good show. This was a great show. I love these shorter, simpler shows. And when I say shorter, clearly it's still a 2-hour show, but you have 4 matches, 4 segments, and that's it. It reminded me a lot of a few different episodes. One, and they were around the same time, actually, the wild card episode of SmackDown 5 years ago. I think it was like the day after Christmas, I want to say. Maybe 2 days after Christmas. I don't remember exactly, but it was when SmackDown first went live in 2016. It was in December, and they had like AJ Styles, Dolph Ziggler, and Baron Corbin for the WWE Championship. The return of John Cena. They had a SmackDown Tag Team title match, a SmackDown Women's Championship match. And there were only like 3 or 4 matches or 4 segments, whatever. Same thing with the Christmas episode of SmackDown. I mean, the timing was weird because it fell on Christmas, but it was one of the best episodes of SmackDown I've ever seen. We had Roman and Kevin Owens for the Universal Championship inside of a steel cage. This is only a few months ago. Big E beating Sami Zayn for the Intercontinental Championship, a women's tag team title match, and then something else. This reminded me a lot of that. Obviously, the top 2 attractions on the show were the Intercontinental Championship match and, more importantly, the Universal Championship match in the main event. And not everything on SmackDown, I don't want to say, oh, this is such, the perfect show right now. No show is perfect, whether it be SmackDown or NXT or Dynamite or whatever it might be. For example, as much as I enjoyed this show, I could not give 2 fucks about Natalya and Tamina versus Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler. That was one of the 4 matches on the show. They wasted time with that garbage. It was cool to see the women get a lot more time this week between that tag team match and the opener that involved Bianca, Belair, and Bayley. Because it feels like with the women on SmackDown, there's no Sasha Banks right now. We haven't seen her since the SmackDown after WrestleMania, which is probably for the best. She can come back at Backlash or after Backlash or at some point to reemerge and challenge Bianca. I almost said Bayley. Bianca for the SmackDown Women's Championship in a rematch, and maybe at SummerSlam, whatever. Probably before then. So it was cool to see the women get more time. Unfortunately, the feud, I think Bayley and Bianca is a perfectly fine feud. The other feud they're devoting a lot of time to, or, I guess by their definition, a lot of time, is a Natalya and Tamina versus Shayna and Natalya, or Shayna and Nia Jax. Who gives a fuck? Honestly, I genuinely ask you, who is invested in this feud for the women's tag team titles? The titles are good in theory. Look no further than Impact. It's not that the tag titles are a bad idea. It's the execution of said titles that is not good. Impact has their own knockouts, women tag team titles, and they're actually great. In WWE, they're completely pointless. So Natalya, Tamina versus Shayna and Nia on this show was just a total waste of time. Natalya and Tamina winning, which unfortunately sets up another match between the two teams, probably for the pay-per-view. Again, I ask, who cares? But other than that, I thought this was a great show. So let's start from the beginning here. I already talked about the women's tag team match, so we'll skip over that when it comes time for it. But the opener saw Bianca Belair and her husband Montez Ford team up with Angelo Dawkins, otherwise known as the Street Profits, you might have heard of him, in a 6-person tag team match against Bayley and the SmackDown tag team champions Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode. This was a good match. The promos preceding it, admittedly, weren't very good. It's not that they weren't good, just there really wasn't anything notable. It was kind of like a revolving door of promos. We see this a lot in WWE and other promotions, but definitely WWE more than other companies. And it's not very good unless it's like the right mix of people or it makes storyline sense. You know, again, Bianca and Montez had that relationship, so I liked a lot what they did in this match where, like, Bayley attacked Bianca at ringside and then Montez got distracted, so Dolph, like, super kicked him. I thought that was a logical spot to do when you have a husband and wife in the same match. And the match itself was good. It's just the promos preceding it felt like filler. But the match was fine. Montez Ford pinning, I think it was Robert Roode for the win with a splash, a beautiful-looking splash off the top rope. The best frog splash probably in any company right now. That is a beautiful-looking frog splash. But yeah, the babyfaces pick up the win, and yeah, Bayley could probably use some momentum. She hasn't won a lot of matches in the last year or so. I feel like she won recently. She hasn't won a match in quite a while, so she probably could have used this, but I assume this was done to set up the Profits for another shot at the SmackDown Tag Team titles. Now, I've said this before. The Profits and Roode and Ziggler work well together, but they have done this feud to fucking death. Please, can we move on from the Profits versus Ziggler and Roode, I beg of you. It's ridiculous how many times they've done this match over the last 6 months. There are other teams on this show, and they've utilized those other teams. They teased the title shot potentially for Rey and Dominic, which is cool. I still say this is building to not the Profits versus Roode and Ziggler again, but rather the Profits versus Rey and Dominic in a number one contenders match. And maybe that leads to a triple threat, but I feel like that's way too similar to the four-way they just did before WrestleMania, also involving Otis and Chad Gable. I would rather just have it be Rey and Dominic versus Roode and Ziggler at this point, because they've done Roode and Ziggler versus the Profits to fucking death, no matter how good the matches are. And again, the problem is that with this feud, the Profits have already lost to Roode and Ziggler multiple times. They lost the tag team titles to them, they lost the rematch in the Fatal 4-Way, and then they lost clean in another rematch right after WrestleMania. They got to get them out of the title picture. It's Rey and Dominic's time, in my opinion. I already talked about the women's tag team match, non-title, Natalya and Tamina winning, probably again setting up a rematch for WrestleMania Backlash, who cares. We had another Aleister Black vignette on the show, which was cool, talking about his father and all this other shit. I feel like some people are really going to like it, and some other people just won't care. It is better than the knock on my door begging for a fight, or however he used to say it. That shit was dumb. This at least looks like he has some creative freedom behind it, at least if only a little bit. It looks cool. The graphics are cool. I'm just waiting for him to come back. It's better than not seeing him at all. It's a step in the right direction, but I want him on the show probably. I mean, the old music was amazing, but if they bring him back with the music that he had before he took time off, or before they took him off TV more specifically, more accurately, then that's fine too, because that sounded like it was a cool theme as well. So, yeah, hopefully Aleister Black is back soon. Maybe Big E wins back the Intercontinental Championship and he goes after Big E. I don't honestly really know what you do with Aleister Black as a first feud type of thing. There's a lot of people on SmackDown they're not really doing anything with right now, but, we've already seen him and Kevin Owens a bunch. I don't want to see that again. That was literally the last match he had before he took time off, so I don't really want to see that rivalry rekindled. Daniel Bryan's gone from the show. They need more baby faces. Maybe Cesaro loses and then faces Aleister Black. That could be an option. They had a pair of awesome matches a few years ago when Aleister first got called up to the main roster. So, that could be an option. Cesaro would have to lose probably. I guess that's an option. I mentioned Big E. He did have another opportunity at the Intercontinental Championship on the show against Apollo Crews, the current champ. Another good match from the two, but the issue with these matches that they're having is that they're never either given enough time or it ends in interference or both. Like, I really enjoyed the Mania match. That was probably the best match they've had to date. But it was like a fucking 5-minute match. Probably didn't need to be any longer than that, which is fine. But then you had the interference from Commander Aziz, the former Babatunde, a.k.a. Dabakato, a.k.a. who gives a shit. And I like the guy. I'm just saying, they've given him so many fucking names and they pretend they didn't know who he was before he became Commander Aziz. He was literally on the show 6 months ago on the opposite brand, but at any rate. Yeah, so the issue with their matches is that they're always either short or they end in interference. This one was given some more time. I thought it was a very good match. but it ended in interference. It ended in interference from a run, not a run-in, but, interference from Commander Aziz. So then you had Sami Zayn come out and Kevin Owens come out, clearly building to a fatal four-way for the championship, probably at the next pay-per-view, which sounds fucking awesome. Owens and Zayn still feuding, even though Owens has already beaten Zayn twice, but putting them back in the Intercontinental Championship picture is cool. Adding Owens into the mix is cool, because it really started with Big E, Zayn, and Cruz. I mean, really, it was Big E and Cruz, or Big E and Zayn, rather. Cruz got added in. Could never win the championship until recently. And now Kevin Owens is back in the mix. So I think that's really cool. It should be a great four-way. It gives me vibes of that four-way, in which I was fortunate enough to be in attendance for, from Extreme Rules 2016, exactly 5 years ago this month. It could be almost exactly 5 years ago to the day from when WrestleMania Backlash is, depending on what weekend it is. I think it might be in 2 weeks. It's not next week, is it? Is WrestleMania Backlash next week? I honestly don't know. I don't think so. It can't be. It can't be. We don't have any matches announced for the fucking show aside from Bianca and Bayley, I don't think, or the WWE title match too. But anyway, I could see them doing the four-way there between the four of them, and that sounds great, and hopefully that marks the end of the road for Big E and Cruz, because they've been feuding for like 4 months now, and it's been a great feud, but at some point you got to move on from it. So we get to the main event. The main event started, they started the introductions and the promos for it, blah, 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 at around like 9:10 maybe. I didn't watch the show live. I watched it on DVR. I went to go see Nobody last night, which was a fucking great movie. I don't know if you've seen The Accountant with, what's his name? Ben Affleck from like 5 years ago. It gave me accountant vibes. And the funny thing is that in the movie, he calls himself an auditor, so it's kind of similar. The main character, Bob, something like that. I forgot his last name. That was a great movie. But I watched SmackDown on delay, but from looking at my DVR, it looked like it started like an hour and 10 minutes in, which was awesome. They gave this a lot of time. They had people predict all show long. We heard from Nakamura and Seth Rollins, who, by the way, challenged Cesaro to a match next week. So it looks like we're getting another WrestleMania rematch next week, which is super cool. But yeah, so they had Rollins weigh in, Shinsuke Nakamura, among other people, giving their predictions on the main event, which I thought gave it a big fight feel. They played up, the promos and their history, and it was fucking great. I thought this was a really, really, really well done presentation for a Universal Championship main event, which is exactly what it should be. We don't get the top title defended on the show very often. So to do stuff like this, I thought was really cool. So yeah, the match itself was excellent. Before we even get to the match, though, Roman Reigns coming out with new music. Finally, the guy's been heel for 8 months now, but clearly, in speaking to him myself for an interview we did a couple of months ago, it sounded like they were taking their time with the music. And he said like late last year, you won't hear me with new music until I do something drastic, blah, blah, blah. I don't know if his recent character traits were just that, or if they were just waiting for the right time in terms of like the right match and the right atmosphere and the right story, or it just wasn't done yet. I don't know. I don't know what the story is there specifically, but honestly, personally, and I knew I would log into Twitter and see polarizing opinions, people saying it was shit or I didn't like it, blah, 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 especially coming off the Jim Johnson interview that he did with Chris Van Vliet earlier this week, where he called all the current wrestling music shit, which honestly is not accurate at all. There are a lot of songs today compared to, 15, 20 years ago that are garbage. And 15, 20 years ago, almost everyone had a great theme for the most part. Even a loser like Maven had a great fucking theme, or Billy Kidman had a banger theme. We don't have that today in WWE, but the more important people, I think anyway, have very good music. Roman Reigns' new song is fucking great, I think. I think it fits the persona perfectly. It fits his cadence to the ring perfectly, his like walk cadence, whatever. Awesome. It just, the Paul Heyman vibing to it while he walked down to the ring alongside Roman was great. People like, there's too many chorus of hums and, whatever. I had seen someone say that, which is fine. I get that. I can't really think of many other themes that do that aside from Seth Rollins. And I don't even think Rollins has that anymore. He may have the hums, or he did at one point when he was doing the Messiah stuff. It doesn't really matter to me. I think it fits the Roman Reigns character perfectly. It gives me Final Boss vibes. It gives me Thanos vibes. I hear that music, and I feel like God is about to bestow his presence upon us. Bestow us with his presence. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like Jesus was about to walk through the fucking curtain when Roman Reigns made his entrance. That's how awesome that music is, I think. Again, you may disagree, and it's all a matter of personal taste. It's generic. It's a fucking loop. Like, not every song can be an actual song. Jim Johnson, I know, was known for that. Like, honestly, though, Stone Cold's theme, I think, was an actual... Wasn't that a loop, though? I feel like that was a loop. I mean, yeah, John Cena's is a song, and DX was a song, and Taker, I think, was a loop as well, but anyway. People like to forget about that type of shit. Triple H was an actual song. Baron Corbin's, was like the last theme that Jim Johnston worked on, the last person's theme that he worked on, is awesome. And that's an actual song. Not every song can be like that, and Jim Johnston isn't here anymore, unfortunately. But I think Roman's new theme is very cool. I am a big fan. So that set the tone right from the get-go before the match even began. Like I said, the match itself was awesome. They worked as well together as you could possibly hope. There really wasn't a lot of suspense in Bryan winning because we knew he wasn't going to win here. There was the off chance he could. It wasn't impossible, but you knew that he was probably losing. It was more a matter of how, to be honest with you, and how they would go about it. For example, a lot like the Intercontinental Championship match. Would they have interference? Would it be a non-finish? I honestly thought at one point they could have done a DQ. Not that I wanted to see that, but I fear that they could do a DQ where, like, Bryan wins after interference, but because he didn't actually lose, he doesn't have to leave SmackDown. That would be the biggest cop-out ever. And especially after we already got a DQ earlier in the evening, that would have completely changed my opinion on the show. 100%. Like, if we get two top title DQs in two different marquee matches, I would have been very frustrated. Biggie and Cruz I got because it furthered the feud, whatever. With the main event, that would have been a massive letdown. So thankfully, they did not do that. But Bryan put up a great fight. They got a lot of great time. It felt like a pay-per-view main event. Heyman stayed at ringside, did not get involved. No Jey Uso until afterward, which was a pleasant surprise. And Roman won clean with the guillotine, and Bryan passed out. So I thought this was wonderfully done. And then afterward, he continues to beat down. He continues to beat down on Bryan. Jey Uso comes in and levels Cesaro. He keeps him tied up to the ropes while he watches. He's forced to watch Roman completely obliterate Bryan with a concerto. So as Bryan's swan song from SmackDown, this was perfect. This was awesome. I hate to keep sounding like a broken record and beating down a dead horse here, blah blah blah, but like it was very very good. And I thought Bryan's final farewell from the Blue Brand was masterfully done. This was really really well done. He put over Roman on the way out. Roman looks like a fucking killer. They set up Cesaro clearly as the next number one contender to the title, probably a WrestleMania Backlash. And now Bryan, they made it the point Michael Cole brought up many, many times. And by the way, Pat McAfee is great. I don't know if I've said that many times in the last couple of weeks or whatever since he joined the commentary team, but he is really, really good. I'm very glad we have Pat McAfee on SmackDown commentary as opposed to Raw or whatever. So Michael Cole brought it up many times that this was, if Bryan lost, this would be his final match on SmackDown. They do this dumb shit where it's like, oh, if he loses, he's fired. Loser leaves town. And yeah, there are a few rare occasions where that person is actually leaving or whatever, taking time off their contracts expiring, and then they do that. It's happened before. They did it years ago with Ric Flair, and they've done it with Michelle McCool at one point. I think actually 10 years ago today at Extreme Rules 2011. I don't know why I would remember that, but yeah, 10 years ago today, they did that with Michelle McCool and Layla. I think it was supposed to be like a loser leaves SmackDown match, a lot like this was. I mean, this wasn't loser leaves SmackDown. It was only if Bryan lost, he would leave SmackDown. But I think they got word that Michelle's contract was expiring and she wanted to leave, so they changed it to loser leaves WWE. But anyway, I thought this was just an awesome match and a great way to send Bryan packing from the Blue Brand. So send him packing from Friday nights. Like I said, they brought it up many times to say that this was his final showing on SmackDown. So where does he go from here is the new question. Does he take time off and then come back to SmackDown in a few months? I don't think so. Is this it for him as a full-time performer? I don't think so. His contract expires in a few months. I don't think it's September. I think it's before then. He said in an interview someone was trying to get it out of him when exactly it expires. He didn't give an answer. But he's like, I think people like to think it's September because that's when my last contract expired. But he kind of hinted at that it wasn't. It's not September. That doesn't mean that it's not August. I mean, I think it was reported a couple of years ago that he had re-signed in August. I'm pretty sure. I don't know when exactly. I think that was 2018 if I'm remembering correctly. But it doesn't even really matter. I think he's sticking around. I think he's going to another show, doing all the matches on another show before he might leave. I don't know if he is leaving or what, but he's been on SmackDown nonstop for 5 years now, whether it be as a wrestler, as a GM, or doing whatever. So him going to another show makes sense. Raw needs more top baby faces beyond Bobby Lashley. I guess Braun's a baby face, I guess. But Bryan and Bobby, or whatever the match might be, I think is fucking cool. We could see that. Could he go to NXT? I'm going to say no. Will he? Should he? Should he? Yes. I think that'd be awesome. Anything is better than Raw, but Raw could use him creatively. NXT would be awesome. Just go down there, have as many matches as they can before he gets called up. A rematch with Adam Cole. Him and Kyle O'Reilly would be fucking amazing. You could do him and Karrion Kross, which could be a lot of fun. Him and Cameron Grimes could be a blast. I think they could have a lot of fun together. Man, there's a lot of names in NXT I think that would work wonderfully. Him and Finn Balor, just take my money right now. So I think him and NXT would be cool. Again, do I see it happening? No, I'm not getting my hopes up. Him doing like a literal tour of WWE before he possibly leaves, which I don't think he is. My prediction is that he sticks around in a part-time role. That's what I think will happen. But what if he was to take a tour of WWE, whether he re-signs or not? Like he goes to NXT for a little while. 205 Live is just so unimportant that there's really no match to be had there for him anyway. Like it's not even, the Cruiserweight Champion isn't even on SmackDown. I think Bryan and Kushida could be a blast. I talked to Bryan like a month or two ago, and he mentioned Kushida as someone he would love to face. So he's not on 205 Live, but he is on NXT. I think Bryan on 205 Live wouldn't really, who cares? But I think it'd be cool personally as someone who watches the show. Him in NXT UK for a week or two, a match with him and Walter, holy shit, would be amazing. Like, holy fuck, that would be an incredible match. There's a couple matches to be had over there. So yeah, I would love to see him do like a mini tour of WWE, going to all the other different brands, Raw, NXT, 205 Live, probably not, and NXT UK. Again, that's what I would do personally before he possibly leaves, which again, I don't think he is, but we'll see what they do with it. I think it's a lot likelier that he either takes some time off and comes back to Raw, or he just shows up on Monday. Either way, I think he's Raw bound. I think Vince probably realizes, even though there's a lot more matches for Bryan to be had on SmackDown, I think personally, like him and Cruz could have been a lot of fun. Him and Aleister Black could have been cool. We never got that full-on feud with him and Rollins, which Rollins teased earlier in the show when he was giving his prediction. Him and Edge, and I had some people say like, Edge, he can go anywhere. He doesn't have to be on Raw, he doesn't have to be on SmackDown. I don't know. I think SmackDown could use Edge. So to lose Bryan and Edge in the matter of like a couple of weeks, I think would be a big blow to SmackDown. Could you do the feud on Raw? I mean, I guess. But the thing is that Raw has the talent. They're just not doing shit with these people. We haven't seen AJ Styles in weeks. Ricochet is just a fucking loser. Like they have the talent on Raw. That's the problem. They have the talent. They're just not using it. So adding Bryan to a broken system, I don't know if it's exactly going to fix their problems. So, I'm not even sure what I was saying there, but Bryan on Raw could be interesting. We'll see. But I would love to see Bryan do like a mini tour of WWE. Oh yeah, the Bryan and Edge feud. That's really what I wanted to see, with Edge blaming Bryan for his loss to the Universal Championship match at Mania. We haven't seen Edge since WrestleMania. So, it looks like he's just taking time off until they need him for another feud. I thought we'd get Edge and Bryan coming out of Mania, but it looks like we won't. So, maybe on Raw. It's possible that we get it on Raw. But I guess time will tell. Nonetheless, guys, I thought this was a very good episode of SmackDown, as I illustrated earlier. The main event was absolutely worth going out of your way to see. The rest of the show wasn't just fantastic. I mean, it wasn't like a great show, but I did think it was a great show overall, if only for the presentation of the main event. Had it not been for that main event, this would probably be just a pretty good, if not just a solid episode of SmackDown. But I think the main event was what put it over the top. But I thought they did a good job with the IC title match. That was a good match up until the DQ finish, which was dumb. But at least it served a purpose in setting forward a four-way probably for the pay-per-view for that championship. We got another vignette from Aleister. We heard from the Mysterios. We had that good six-man tag team match to kick off the show. The only thing I really didn't care about the show was the women's tag team match. Natalya and Tamina versus Nia and Shayna I thought was just complete garbage. The match, I guess, was fine. I just don't care about the feuds. That obviously puts a different twist on it for me, and that I just don't care. But otherwise, I thought this was a two thumbs up effort from the Blue brand once again this week, and one of the better all-around stronger shows, one of the all-around stronger SmackDowns I've seen in some time. And that's saying a lot, because this show's been pretty good for a while now. But again, to go back to what I said earlier, to kind of go full circle here, how the same company, not even NXT, but how the same company could produce both a show like Raw on Monday, which was fucking terrible, with one of the worst first hours I have ever seen in the history of that show, to then producing a SmackDown like this. It blows my mind. It blows my mind. To go from producing a final episode of SmackDown like this to the first hour of Raw from Monday, just amazing. I don't know how they do it, but they do. Remarkably enough, they somehow find ways to make the highs higher with SmackDown and like the lows lower with Raw. So I don't get it, but I'll take the good and I'll take the bad with the good, or whatever the fucking expression is. Thank you guys for checking out my audio review here on the channel or on WrestleRant.com. I appreciate you guys checking it out. Be sure to, if you're listening on YouTube, to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. We will have a Talking Smack review up at some point, either later today, hopefully, if not tomorrow. I'm hoping later today. But yeah, we've had a lot of interviews go up lately, including last week, like almost one every single day last week. This week we had Mercedes Martinez on Tuesday ahead of her match with Dakota Kai in NXT. And we also had one with Ryan Nemeth on Friday, just yesterday, talking about his new movie called Heel. That was a lot of fun. That's an actual video interview. The Mercedes one is over the phone. That's an audio video or an audio interview. The Ryan Nemeth one is over video. And there are more I have yet to publish that are coming out at some point. I just got to work on the articles and stuff like that, so just keep an eye out for those in the coming weeks and days. I can exclusively break the news right here, though. That coming to the channel on Monday is my exclusive interview with Raw superstar Braun Strowman, the new, or one of the new number one contenders to the WWE Championship at Backlash, WrestleMania Backlash as it is. I recorded it yesterday, going up on Monday here on the channel in audio form and on BleacherReport.com, so be sure to check that out when it is uploaded as well. Have a great rest of your weekend, guys. I'm Graham G. Matthews. Enjoy your month of May, and I'll catch your ass down the road.